everybody, it's Alicia and Steven. Say hello, Steven.
Hello.
And I'm sitting here with Helen. And so this machine has cleaned up really nicely. The lighting over here is super bright, so it's kind of hard to get a lot of the details that I was gonna try to talk about here. The decals on this machine are not 100% perfect, but you know what? They actually are intact, which is a good thing. Sometimes that's hard to find on featherweights. A lot of the times the decals, not so much on the back half of the machine, but right up here worn away with age and use. This faceplate here cleaned up really nicely. It had some yellowing on there and it totally came off, and now it's real shiny, which is always my favorite part. And again, the decals on the back are still in really good condition. There's just a little bit of silvering that happens. My clickety has quite a bit of silvering, if I'm being 100% honest there. But for the most part, the machine, you know, it's shiny, it's gorgeous. There's a few little marks in the not the decals, but in the clear coat that does again happen with age. It's just a little bit of the cracking. It again doesn't affect the machine. And I mean, when we're talking about it, this is an antique, so the machine looks amazing. We had a few hiccups along the way. First and foremost, I'm still waiting to hear back from Jackie to see what she wants to do about the stitch length regulator, and I'll just kind of demonstrate. This right here is very hard to turn. It's like not turning to go up here, and it's actually hurting my thumb to do it, and that's because the stitch length regulator is bent. I don't know how it got bent. You can still sew with it even though that the thumb screw is not going up to the actual number on the stitch length regulator itself. Basically this is just to kind of hold that into place, but it's not affecting the overall stitches of the machine. So here's some of the stitches. This is from when I was setting the tension. You can see the progression. But it is something to be aware of, and I definitely want to make sure that if she wants that to be replaced, then we do that before we send that back. The other thing that was happening was the motor was starting to pull all by its little self. The foot controller down here was getting extremely hot. Steven, you want to talk a little bit about what you did to the motor before we actually do some stitching?
So the reason the motor was continuously pulling even when you didn't push the button down is because there's a resistor in the foot pedal that comprises of carbon discs, and for some reason this one is set so that you don't have the typical 1/8 inch gap between the resistor housing and the metal plate that is spring loaded. So we had to take it apart 3 different times before we found the right setting to where the current would not be flowing through it, which is good because if you don't do that, you could potentially start a house fire, as Alicia can attest.
Yeah, because that was extremely hot. It was very hot. And then why don't you explain like why we took apart the motor itself?
Well, additionally, we had to take apart the motor because when using the foot pedal, there were spots in the motor that when you would depress the foot pedal, the motor would not spin. But if you bumped the hand wheel, then the motor would take off, which leads you to believe that there's a dead spot in the motor. So we took the motor apart, we re-sanded down the commutator and put it back together, and we have not seen that same issue. We've not seen it have any dead spots. So I'm thinking there's probably just some carbon dust buildup over the commutator, or grease and brush dust got in the way of something and wasn't allowing current to flow properly.
So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and do the stitches here on Helen. We're going to do the sample stitches going forwards, backwards, and a little bit of meandering all around. And as I've learned, always want to hold the tail threads at least for the first couple of stitches. And this machine really does go. You can feather it since the foot pedal has been adjusted to the way that it should should be. And let me grab my scissors. We'll go ahead and cut that, and we'll do a backward stitch. And again, even when we're doing that, you want to make sure that you have these little tail threads to hold on to. At the very least, the top one. I was standing up when I sewed that. That's why it kind of took off. I mean, this machine is very, very quick. But you can control the speed. I'll just do it one more time going forward. So you can slow it down, speed it up, go in between. And that, my friends, is Helen. And there are her stitches. This is the front. And there is the back. So, thank you all so much for tuning in to Featherweight 38 and your patience as we got Helen troubleshooted and stitching. And now she is just going to wait to be shipped off, hopefully on Monday, unless we need to change out this part. And then we'll have her send off pictures to follow.